They said I was too ugly to represent the school, too ugly to stand on a stage, too ugly to be the face of a competition. Yet 20 years later, that same school framed my portrait and hung it in the auditorium. My name is Modupe, and this is my story. I was 7 years old when the first insult landed. I walked into class with my braids tied neatly in red ribbons, proud of how I looked. But then I heard it, gorilla face. Laughter erupted around me. The next day it was coconut nose, then village clown. Each word was like a stone thrown into my chest, and though I wanted to scream, I said nothing. Instead, I retreated to the back of the classroom, where I filled the pages of my notebook with poems no one cared to hear. Those lines became my only safe place, my only refuge. One day, the principal announced that the school needed a girl to represent us at the state oratory contest. My heart skipped. For once, I believed this was my chance. I raised my hand slowly, timidly, with hope swelling in my chest. The room fell silent. Then laughter. The English teacher shook her head and said, "Modupe? With that face?" The laughter that followed was louder than anything I'd ever heard. They chose Uchechi instead, the girl everyone adored, the girl with golden hair and soft skin. But the poem she recited? I wrote it. That night, I cried behind the classroom block and looked up at the stars. Through tears, I whispered, "God, if you ever give me a chance, I promise, I will be the voice of every girl who was told she wasn't enough." From then on, I lived with purpose. I woke up at 4 every morning, borrowing my mother's lantern to read and write before dawn. When the house grew too noisy, I slipped out to the mango tree, writing quietly while the world still slept. By 3rd grade, I had memorized 50 poems, but I was never allowed to perform even one. The laughter never stopped either. Even in high school, people said, "You're smart but too plain, brilliant but too ugly. You'd look better with makeup." But beauty wasn't my dream. Impact was. When I was admitted to the University of Ibadan, it felt like destiny finally opened a door. I studied English and sharpened my craft, pouring my pain into words. People mocked me still, but my determination spoke louder than their insults. By the time I graduated, I was at the top of my class. And then, I made a decision. I could choose silence forever, or I could raise my voice. I chose my voice. I launched a small YouTube channel called Unfiltered Lines. I had no fancy lights, no big studio, just my voice, my notebook, and a cheap phone. I spoke raw truth, unpolished, painful, real. One night, I uploaded a poem titled "The Girl Behind the Curtain." At first, nothing happened. 5 views, 10 views. But then, it spread. 5,000, 50,000, 1,000,000. The comments flooded in. People wrote, "You told my story. You saved me. You gave words to pain I couldn't describe. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible." The voice they once ignored had become the voice they couldn't escape. Then, one Monday morning, the email came. It was from my old school. The subject line read, "Welcome Event." They were celebrating 50 years and wanted me, yes, me, Modupe Olaitan, to be the keynote speaker. I froze. I stared at the screen for 30 minutes. Finally, I whispered, "God, you kept your word." When I walked back onto that campus, the air felt different. Students pointed at me with excitement. "That's the YouTube poet," they shouted. They ran up with phones in hand, eager to take photos. Even the teachers hugged me, smiling with pride. The new principal took me by the hand and led me into the auditorium, and there I stopped. My eyes filled with tears. On the wall, framed in gold, next to the portraits of the school's founders and past principals, was my face, and beneath it the words, "Modupe Olaitan, the voice of a generation." The girl they mocked had become the woman they honored. The girl they silenced had become the voice they could not silence. The girl they called ugly was now the pride of the school. Today, I run a foundation that gives scholarships to girls from marginalized communities. We train them in poetry, debate, and self-confidence. Because I know what it feels like to be silenced, to be overlooked, to be told you are not enough. But I also know this: the world may call you ugly, but destiny calls you necessary. And sometimes the girl they tried to hide becomes the woman who lights up entire buildings.